Hi, I'm Renee Barraza, Director of GRC Solutions with MetricStream, and I want to welcome you for coming to and joining our virtual GRC Summit 2020 by MetricStream, focused on operational resilience and risk management and GRC framework in 2020 and beyond. We have an industry expert speaking today on this topic, and I'm glad to introduce Stephen Woitsky. Stephen is the SVP of Group Operational Risk Manager with Bank of the West, responsible for leading his team around operational risk management and the execution and management of operational risk, enterprise risk, covering wealth management, commercial, and retail banking. He is a hands-on and results-driven executive with more than 20 years of experience leading his team in enterprise risk, operational risk, internal audit, regulatory compliance, and controls. So a warm welcome, and thank you, Stephen, for joining.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about operational resilience and GRC frameworks. A lot of us who are attending have also experienced life-changing experiences, both professionally and personally, through the pandemic. Hopefully, what we can cover today is a few things as far as how our companies have reacted to the pandemic. Some lessons learned that may help us, some recommendations as we begin to come out of this, and just to talk a little bit about the importance of operational resilience, because I think that's really relevant considering how things will change at our companies. So the first topic is just to take a look at some of the things that we've experienced as far as the reaction to the pandemic over the last 7 to 8 weeks. Obviously the pandemic has triggered our business continuity, our crisis, and our resilience plans for us to adopt to this new environment. Probably in most firms, at least in financial services, about 70 or 90% of our teams are now working remotely. Our executive management teams and our response teams have been organized to not only understand, assess, but provide direction and decision-related making to our clients, our risks, and our financial exposure. It's certainly been an adjustment for our teams at Bank of the West. But what's important is that we've also had to change the way that we make decisions in our teams, and we've had to empower teams to both process, manage, and escalate risks differently. But in doing so, we've had to find ourselves. We've had to be agile to be able to equip our teams with the right equipment and to make decisions as far as what are the critical teams and people who need to still come to the office or to our branches, and for those who stay home. So it was really important for us to understand what those needs were and to react accordingly. But what's surprising, though, was the effectiveness of our ability to adopt to this new work environment. But in addition, what we found is it was really important to understand our own employees and what was needed for them to set up in their home environment, but also to adjust their work schedules, because obviously, since each industry's been impacted, some of us are doing homeschooling and some of us don't have daycare. So that has had to be an adjustment as well. But some of the things for our companies, as far as what we've experienced, is was to be able to look at our technology as far as our GRC tools to help us manage our risks effectively in this new environment. What I mean by that is that the GRC tools from a risk management, from a vendor management perspective, has allowed us to take a look at our top risks across our different business units, as well as our controls, to understand and determine what is being effectively managed and monitored and what's not, and what may need to be escalated for risk acceptance purposes. So I think that for the companies that have reacted accordingly, and most of them have, as far as my discussions with my colleagues across some other firms, as far as the crisis management teams and the executive management teams, which are meeting regularly to address the changes to the businesses, new types of risks affecting the businesses, but also to service our clients. because that's really, really important. So, but in relation to the GRC tools, for us at Bank of the West and for some of my colleagues, I think those tools have helped us because we've used those tools from a standpoint of pulling risk control self-assessment inventories and to determine where we have our key controls and our key risks and to actually work with the first line and with the businesses to make sure that they're actually being managed properly. And where we may have shortages in staff is to understand where they need to be possibly escalated or risk accepted. So I think that some of the tools that we've used in conjunction with the GRC tools in our inventory as far as our risks and controls and our taxonomies is to be able to have solutions or additional tools in our toolbox, such as risk acceptance, to allow us to manage our process, our structure, and our technologies effectively. So those are probably some of the key things that we've done as far as reaction to the pandemic. But finally, what's just as important is the ongoing adjustment as far as communications by our senior management to not only our clients but also to the workforce, and to make sure that they understand the importance of what they're doing and the value that they're providing to the firm. I think that those are really important, and we'll cover that a little bit more as we go forward. So
Stephen,
that's a little bit about how we.
Stephen, if we can
Yes.
stop you here very quickly. I don't see the slides moving. Are you switching through your slides, or?
I'm sorry. I didn't know I had control of that. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. My bad. What was I going to do? Do you want me to start over?
No, I think we can just start. Because I think you were just talking about the agenda at a very high level, right? So we can probably just skip to the part where. Were you going to start with this slide, or were you done with this?
Well, I kind of gave it a high level, but I can start here if that's okay.
Yeah, we can do that. We can restart from here.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
No
Great.
No worries. 3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks. So what I want to share with you now first is some high-level things that we've experienced at Bank of the West, but also what I've seen from some of my colleagues across the industry and what they've experienced as well. You know, obviously, the crisis triggered our business continuity, our crisis, and our resilience plans, and we probably have in each of our own companies estimated between 70 and 90% of our workforce working remotely and have essential staff going to specific centers or offsites. But what we found, though, is that executive management teams have been mobilized, and specific response teams as well, to both understand, assess, and provide direction as far as key decision making for risks and financial exposure and adjustments to our business models. Because obviously we're using more digital than we probably have 2 months ago, or we've been needed to add digital in addition to that. But in getting our workforce ready, it's also required our businesses to provide equipment to our staff to work from home effectively, and to look at our existing policies to permit or to approve on exceptional basis staff to work from home. And I think that the workforce has done a tremendous job to be able to do that. But we've also have found that we've had to adjust our workforce as far as different shifts because of the needs as far as homeschooling. Just moving along. So some of the other actions that also have been is that we've really tapped into utilizing our risk technology as far as our GRC systems of record, whether that's metric stream or other GRC tools, to be able to leverage the existing inventory of processes and controls to understand with our first line business owners and our first line risk managers what processes are being managed effectively, or where there may be gaps in order to address them, or in a long term. In some instances, we've actually had to risk accept some things, but we've certainly utilized our governance in the example of not only risk acceptance from an ops and text perspective, but also from a new activity perspective, because we've had to address certain things. But also the GRC tools has helped us in the space of our vendor management, because obviously a lot of firms such as ours does have some things that are offshore that are in India. And even in even in that space, in that theater, we've had to adjust because the workers who are working probably in a call center or other situations now have to work from home. So I think that some of the things that we've reacted to is that the first and second line have partnered together with the business in order to be able to try to manage our people, process, our structure, and our technology effectively. So those are just some reactions to the pandemic. There's probably several more, but just at a high level, I think these are probably some of the things that resonate with the folks who are on this call. I'm going to move to lessons learned now, and there are many, many lessons learned. I've only selected a few, but I think that this will feed into some of the other things that we're going to talk about as far as resilience in a bit. So I think that investment by companies to set up staff to work from home was really, really important. We've had to navigate and adjust significant personnel to access systems from a trading process and a settlement perspective. We've had to adjust the workforce that I just spoke about for both homeschooling and reduction of daycare. Operational risk management in its old form is no longer sufficient. We've had to focus more on service recovery, business continuity, and incident management as far as making sure that we keep everything running versus trying to recover. But in addition, I think that the pandemic has forced some institutions to accelerate the use of digital channels. I mean, for my own self, if you asked me what Zoom was 2.5 weeks ago, I would have had no idea. Now I know how to use. Now I've used Zoom almost every day, and I can actually change my background to the New York Skyway. So it's pretty cool. So obviously, it's just a sample of what's going to happen and how we're going to move significantly to remote capabilities, both right now and for the rest of the year. Because I think what we're facing is that we're only going to have a staggered workforce going back to the office in the next quarter or two. So I think some of the things that we've also had to do, or what we're reading about, whether it's the Journal or Bloomberg, is that we've had to adjust our customer borrowing needs and the withdrawals. We've had to assess what our liquidity needs are, both in the short and long term. I know, as we've seen from some of the earnings in the first quarter and some of the write-downs from significant banks that have already presented their earnings, whether it's Chase or Morgan Stanley or Bank of America or Wells. So we've had to develop short-term liquidity plans. We've had to update our contingency plans. We've had to adjust how we're dealing with our customers. And I think that the banks that are certainly leading the pack understand what their social responsibilities are to their customers, whether it's commercial banking, retail, or digital, to clearly communicate on an ongoing basis what the adjustments are going to be and how they can still use the institution effectively. And I know that a lot of us from a regional bank standpoint is that we're knee deep in trying to process the PPP program for small business borrowers. So that's really significant. So those are probably some of the key lessons learned. By no means, it's not a representation of everything. I think that we all have our own experiences at our own institutions and our own functions. So just trying to speak to some of the things that we've experienced in the financial services industry. Some recommendations that I think we've seen at our respective institutions, or things to consider or think about in our specific functions, is I think that board and senior management needs to provide leadership and oversight for operational resilience framework. I think that we'll talk a little bit about that later. But also through the evaluation of the significant business services, how well have they performed in the pandemic? Where did we fail? So that means that we need to understand from the board and from a senior management level, as far as what are the tolerances that we had in place before and in the future as far as disruption of business services. In addition, we need to identify the risks and materiality of the outsourcing and key third-party dependencies that we've experienced, because not one of us has had a playbook like this before, and we need to adjust and calibrate accordingly. So that's going to impact how we think about using plausible scenarios and how in our scenario analysis and in our CAR calculations and allocations in the future. But in addition, we want to ensure that our self-assessments of our impact tolerances have been tested in using extreme plausible scenarios. So how we've tested and monitored our resilience plans certainly will definitely change as we go forward. But some other things to think about too is that we need to anticipate what our regulators may react to from the pandemic as far as how we interact with our customers on an ongoing basis. That doesn't mean that there may be new regulations, but there may be new expectations or a heightened awareness as far as how we are managing our client relationships in a new environment as far as digital is concerned. And then finally, it's just that to ensure our board and senior management leadership have the right oversight and operational resilience on the operational resilience framework, and it's embedded for each business, not just client-facing businesses, but our corporate and support functions as well, which are critical to keep the lights on and everything moving. So those are some of the key recommendations. What I want to go now is just to talk a little bit about operational resilience strategy. And I think all of you are probably familiar with the resilience strategy or framework for your business, but I just wanted to spend a few moments here because it involves not only the control functions, but risk and compliance, business management, market participants, business operations, external parties. It includes IT, managing our outsources as far as third party, but facilities management. Basically, what an effective resilience strategy represents is people from the top throughout the organization, front, middle, back, to participate and have skin in the game for it to be actually value added. But it also includes the use of governance, data management, incident, cybersecurity, and resilience management. And so it really starts with the risk assessments of the company. It's hard to get out of my tongue because that really drives what you're looking at as far as the criticality and the key processes and associated risks, and then the systems that are used to provide regular and timely reporting as far as any changes to the processes. So those are probably some of the key things as far as that go into an operational resilience strategy. But again, it starts with people and it starts with framework and then governance, and that everybody has some ownership into the success of the strategy. The next thing what I want to talk a little bit about as far as steps to consider as far as to have an effective framework. Rather than simply recovering from failure, I think what we've learned is that firms need to be able to continue operating during a disruption before fully recovering. That's the distinction between a resilience and a business continuity or disaster recovery. Resilience is continuing to keep the lights on even when things are impacting your firm, not only from a work from home, but also the changing of the markets that we've seen over the last 7 weeks. The pandemic highlighted the significance of availability of key personnel to maintain our services, even when volumes have changed in different scenarios. And for the most part, and I think it's a tribute to the people in our firms and stuff, is that the financial markets have not frozen, and because of what the Fed has done, and because what our government has done, and the market has rebounded significantly since its low point in the mid-March. So I think that some of the additional things, and finally, is that senior and line managers need to be accountable for the resilience framework, and that there's a clear understanding and the ownership that if it's not effectively tested and monitored on a regular basis, firms could be susceptible to failure and a lengthy process to come back online. So I think, though, to ensure that a resilient strategy and a framework is successful, we need to understand the entire chain of the processes to deliver business and support services. That's why it's so important to utilize the different risk assessment methodologies that cover all of the different processes, front, back, middle, that are owned and operated by the firm. And I think that that the resilience assessment or the strategy and the success, it has to cover end to end. It has to be independently tested and be monitored not only for transparent but for change management processes on an ongoing basis. I think our regulators are expecting that. They'll be reviewing that in the future, given the situation that we're coming out of right now. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you today. It by no means is it exhaustive, but at a high level, what we've experienced going into the pandemic, what we've learned, and some of the things that we have to consider coming out of it from a resiliency perspective, will give us a pause and to revisit what we currently have as far as our framework and our governance in order to make us stronger, in order to perform better, or to be more consistent if this would ever happen again. So I want to thank you all for your time today. This was exciting for me to share this topic, and I've certainly learned from it as well, and I'll continue to learn from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen, for sharing. Appreciate your insight and your expertise. It means a lot to everybody on this session. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for participating in this session.